What's up everybody, Brian Earhart here with Team Discraft. Welcome to another episode of Level Up. Today, we're gonna be attacking the slopes and talking about ground play. What? Let's get into it. The best disc golfers in the world are obsessed with how their disc lands, regardless of how long the shot is or what surface they're approaching on. With that said, a lot of lower level players trying to get to that level bleed strokes on treacherous greens very consistently and chalk it up to bad luck rather than a situation they can control. Today I want to walk us through a few different scenarios when it comes to approaching these tricky greens and teach us how to do it a little bit more efficiently. Okay, for this scenario, we have a classic sloped green, sloping down to the left. It's about 150 feet away from the basket from here. If we choose to throw a forehand, if that's your preferred approach shot, here's the one thing to stay away from on this: pure Anheuser into the green. It seems obvious. I've seen a lot more players do it than you'd think, but just playing that pure Anheuser into the green is gonna cause a roll away 80% of the time. You need it to flatten and match the slope of the hill. I have seen that happen on even softer shots. The couple options that you do have is number one, throwing a high pan shot with something a little bit more overstable. I like the zone for this. I aim for the high side of the hill in case I do put too much Anheuser and hit and actually roll down the hill. At least I'm higher than the basket and I roll towards it. The goal is to get it to pan from the Anheuser and land flat on the high side of the hill. The other option that you do have here, if you don't like throwing those pan shots, is just throwing a little flat shot with the zone and letting it hyzer with the slope of the hill. That's totally fine. It feels counterintuitive to actually want to fade with the slope, but it gives you a lot higher percentage of sticking and not rolling away. So to reiterate this, and this is going to be true for nearly every shot we throw onto a tricky green, match the slope of the hill to mitigate rollaways and get your disc to land as soft as possible. If we're coming in with too much force, that raises your chances of a rollaway. Okay, so for this scenario, we have a much steeper slope in front of the basket. The basket is on top of the hill though, it's on the flat spot. And for this shot, especially if you're throwing a backhand putter, being a nose-up thrower is actually to your benefit here. If you land that nose-up stall shot short, you at least match the slope of the hill and mitigate the rollaway. And if you do get it to the top of the hill, it's gonna stall out and run out of speed and land next to the basket. So what we're eventually trying to do is just slow the disc down and have it land softly here. Here's another scenario. We have a steep slope going down to the right. Basket is at the edge of the hill, and we are about 150, 200 feet away from the basket here. Something I want to reiterate, and that I talk about quite a bit when I teach, is every player has a distance where they don't have to worry about form. They can just nearly close their eyes and snap their wrist and put it under the basket, whether that's 30 feet, 75 feet, 200 feet, and for some of the best players in the world, 300 feet or more, they can do that. Remember, you don't have to always be shifting your weight and extending your arm. When you get to a distance you're comfortable with, throw all the form out the window and just trust your wrist. For me, this is about that distance where I feel like I can still play catch, shorten everything up, and snap my wrist to the basket. Here, I like the backhand play. Throw a little soft Anheuser and land it flat on the left side of the basket. If you didn't play years of Ultimate like me and that soft, touchy putter Anheuser is not a strong suit for you yet, a forehand is still a very good shot on this hole. What you want to do though is stall the forehand and make it come into the green a little bit softer. What I mean by stall is nose up and a little Anheuser to drift it over the hill and softly land it back towards the basket. Okay, so another scenario where we have a green that's sloping down to the left. It's a little bit more subtle than the other hill, but I still like to play safe. We don't want to raise our percentages of rollaway by any means. So I like to throw a zone, forehand, high side of the hill, and again, let it flatten and fall to match the slope. We can do that, or if we like the hyzer and it's more simple for us, we can throw the one angle shot as long as the angle of the zone hyzering towards the basket matches the slope of the hill. It's okay to throw a hyzer with the slope, as long as it's low enough and soft enough to slide by the basket rather than hitting edge and skipping. It's not often that this happens, but every now and then you come to an approach shot where there's an absolute backstop behind the basket. Don't forget to be aggressive on these shots. Sometimes the best play is to actually run the basket and try to throw it in. Let's try. Oh, almost. Okay, for another scenario, we have another slope down to the left, but this slope is so severe that I don't want to chance any sort of fading down the hill with the forehand shot. So I'm going to slide up a very subtle hyzer low with a stable to understable putter. That'll raise my chances of sticking on this green. Okay, so here's a very tricky scenario. We are shooting severely downhill to the green. Basket is on the slope. We're about 150 feet away. The trick with shooting an upshot downhill is angles are your worst enemy to land on. You want to try to match the slope of the hill as closely as possible, because since we're going downhill, we're hitting the ground with more pace. The disc is picking up speed as it flies downhill. So I try to attack these shots with a backhand putter, and I try to hold a really soft anhyzer the whole way that pans flat right as it hits the ground. So just to reiterate again, we are watching the speed in which we throw these approaches to the green, and we're mitigating rollaways by matching the slope of the hill as much as we possibly can. Improving your approach shots, especially those on tricky greens, is a very effective way of improving your scoring performance out on the disc golf course. Experimenting with different angles and landings with your approach discs, both forehand and backhand, can only further that improvement and help you level up your game. Thanks for tuning in. Leave us a comment down below with your favorite way to approach a green. Let us know any other topics you'd like us to cover in the future, and we will see you next time.